I tell clients this time and time again because I get it. We all want to be nice. I love that you're a nice person, but I don't know what I don't know. And if you're not telling me, and it's just sitting there in the background festering and building, and quarter after quarter you're sick and tired of me using the wrong word, but as far as I can tell when I go do my independent research, that's what everybody else is saying in the industry. There's no way for me to know.
If the shiny thing works for a specific company, it's worked for the company for a very specific reason. You should not go do it yourself.
Transparency, and whether that's transparency in your process, in who your team is, the deliverables you're providing. In a lot of cases, it's actually putting in proper KPIs that are tied to business objectives so you're not chasing vanity metrics. Well, happy fall, everybody, and welcome to the Challengtunity Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lawson. I think that's my name. We have a very interesting podcast today. I'll tell you more about it in a minute, but the truth is we've never done an episode like this at all. Before I tell you a bit about it, I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Jordan Wolf, who eats meat. Jordan, how are you doing today?
I am a meat eater, and had some chicken today, so I guess I'm good.
Yeah, it's chicken. Congratulations. What did I have today? I had steak. I had steak today. I ate meat today. I'm sorry to all those vegetarian, people out there that might listen to our podcast, but I do eat meat.
This is the podcast where we talk about our lunches. So hashtag best podcast ever.
Hey, yesterday at lunch I brought homemade cow soy, which is Thai food. So the office thought I was a somebody. Mm-hmm. They didn't think I could do that. Well, Jordan, like I mentioned earlier, we have a very different podcast today. Why is it different? How many people do we have on the podcast today?
Well, if I can count, there will be 5, which includes the 2 of us. So really 3 guests, but that's the most we've ever had.
I'm hoping for some chaos. I'm hoping that we're going to have a whole bunch of people sharing stories and just their take and stumbling over each other, kind of like a marketing battle royale. But I don't think we'll get that. We got some pretty nice people on the line here today.
The technology can handle it. All 5 people on the screen simultaneously.
We will. Yeah.
We'll blow up the internet.
I don't even know what the capacity is of this thing, but one day we'll find out. Well, we are talking about a topic that we know quite a bit about, but one that we both felt was important to get a whole bunch of different perspectives on, which is what to expect when working with a digital marketing agency. There is definitely a role an agency plays in providing a service and trust and transparency to a client, but there's also an expectation that goes, it's reciprocated from the client to the agency. And we're going to talk around that topic all over the place. We got 4 different segments, and hopefully our guests don't eat each other alive during that time.
Well, I'm ready to open the tent to see what the circus is like. Let's do it.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's throw it over to the interview. Enjoy. We're really excited for the main chunk of the podcast here today. We've got 5 of us, yes, 5 of us on an interview session talking about agency life and what to expect in working with an agency. As you would have known, Jordan is with us here. And Jordan, you're going to have probably a lot of insight given that you're an agency principal. I'm quite excited to dive into that. But we've got Meghan with us. Meghan Bamford is a content writer, a senior content writer actually, who's been writing for clients in the agency world for how long, Meghan?
Coming up on my 7th year in January.
7th year in January. So I'm very excited to hear some of your crazy writers' stories and just some insights as to, how agencies are kind of working from that lens. We also have another agency principal, Parneet Dilawari, who runs an agency who's actually our sister company called Acceleration Driven. I bet you probably have just a Rolodex or a notepad beside you and a tablet full of information to share today, Parneet.
Oh, totally. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. And then because we are talking about what to expect from an agency, we decided to bring Seanna Johnson on the call. Everyone loves Seanna. Seanna is our project coordinator at Atrium. So anybody who understands how an agency works, the central hub of your agency is people like Seanna. So Seanna, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be back.
Awesome. Well, everybody, welcome. It's frankly, this is the first time we've ever had 5 people on at one time.
It's not quite the Brady Bunch squares, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
No, we're too
Almost.
chaotic for that. Let's be honest.
So I can look down and, talk to different people. Is that how this works? The Brady Bunch squares?
Yeah. Except I always get the corners wrong. I don't know.
Oh, wrong way. That was Parneet. Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we plan on talking about some core topics today. Agency strengths, not agency weaknesses, but agency limitations. Because if we're being realistic about what to expect from an agency, we also have to understand that there's these pros and potentially cons, depending on how you are trying to work with an agency. We're going to be talking about what an agency requires from you. If you've never worked with an agency, that'll be really good insight, at least for yourself. And then what an agency should provide you. So there is a responsibility that goes both ways between the agency as well as from a client. We always look at it like a true partnership, kind of like a marriage. You should be able to create something magical. Ooh, magical. But Jordan, what would you say would be like the number one agency strength or something that comes to mind when you're looking at it from an agency lens?
Well, when we're talking about strengths, there's a variety of different reasons that a company might want to work with an agency. That really depends on where they're at in their business development process. So, if they're a very mature business and they have lots of staff, maybe they do have a marketing person. Maybe they have a whole marketing department. That will change where you're going to get different benefit out of an agency. But most of the time, your first exposure to an agency would be because you need to expand your abilities with marketing beyond what maybe even an individual or part-time person or a small team might be able to handle. And you need the access to multiple specialists or multiple experienced marketing professionals that can help you to scale your efforts on the marketing side. So kind of the strength in numbers advantages of agencies is probably the most common first reason that people might work with an agency. But there are other reasons that kind of go beyond that. But, there's not to be undersold how in the marketing world today, a bigger team of the same skill set can help you to do more of a certain thing. So if you have multiple different advertising, specialists that work for an agency and you hire that agency, then you're going to get a lot of expertise in that one specific area. So if you have a lot of ads to get through in the next year, you're doing this huge press initiative over the next year, and you have a lot of advertising planned, and that's more than you can do in-house, then you may need to work with a large advertising agency, for example, that can get you all those resources. If you're looking for something in digital is pretty diverse in skill sets, so maybe you're looking for a little bit more variety there.
Well, Meghan, you're as a content writer, how often do you collaborate with other team members, ad specialists and so on and so forth, especially when you have a client who maybe has a number of different services that an agency is, working with?
Consistently. It's the biggest thing. Not just for producing content. It is really, really helpful, especially when some of our clients go into trade show season. They're on the go. They're God knows where in North America. And so if, say our social experts are able to tell me something that's coming out of a new initiative that they just learned about at a European conference or something like that, I'm able then to naturally integrate that into my pieces, and vice versa. If I'm sitting down with somebody and they give me a little hit piece in my content discoveries, that's helpful. But it's ultimately, I think it really builds congruency for the client as well. So you're not having to go, okay, this is the person who does this, this is the person who does this, this is the person who has to do this, and you're telling the same story 18 different times, which really just isn't efficient. When you know that you have a cohesive team that is collaborating and communicating with each other, it makes everybody's job, including the clients, far easier to get results a lot faster and to maintain them in the long term.
Which is where like a project coordinator becomes like the central hub of that, really. So,
Yes,
without
I
that,
have so many emails sitting in my inbox that are for everyone. I have notes from clients for everyone else that I'm sure is sitting there I have to deal with in the morning. I didn't have time today, but I know I have those all the time.
So what would you say, Seanna, if you're talking about, strengths and numbers, you might have, a team that with the SEO specialists and, writers and ad specialists and social team members and designers and programmers, and, you got all these individuals, you're at the center of all of that. If you were a client coming in and dealing with someone like yourself, the project coordinator who's at the center, I mean, what would your advice be in working with us, given that, there is strengths in numbers, but there's still a central hub?
A big thing is a lot of people think certain pieces of information aren't relevant or important in marketing. They overlook it in their own business, or their own industry or whatever. A big thing is, if the more you word vomit, the more I have to work off of. So even if you're giving me, 10 pieces of information and 8 of them are things that I knew, but there's 2 new things, that was still worth my time. That was still worth the effort of me doing that. And then I can disseminate that to the rest of the team. Big thing is just let them know what's going on. There's a lot of times that we have gotten caught just because we weren't told something. And so we have to pivot really quickly, and we do, and we can, but not all the time.
Yeah.
And we're going to fall flat if you can't help us. Because really, we're only as good as the information given to us.
Well, and I find, Jordan, you're absolutely right. Strength in numbers does matter, but it's not just the numbers in the sense of, there's this many people that now I get to work with. There's also the fact that an agency works with a number of different industries, right? Dozens and hundreds, or in our case, thousands of clients over all of the years. And so that accumulates into a certain experience that, honestly, sometimes we'll talk to, a jewelry company, and they're going through some kind of business modeling, issues, and we'll be able to pull out of our backpack experiences that we had in a non-for-profit because we watched them, go through their own experiences. So I think the experience element is probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest secret sauces of working with an agency, in addition to the numerical part of specialists or the individuals you're working with.
Yeah, and there's 2 flavors. There's the experience of how many years in business. There's the experience of how many clients in general, regardless of their industry or background that you've worked with. That can, like you said, you can bring experiences from one industry and apply it somewhere else. That can provide some huge different thinking. And then you also have those that specialize in a particular industry and just go deep into a particular area or way of solving a problem for that industry. Now, I know that Parneet also has worked in the agencies and different types of agencies that have different models like that. How have you seen that the experience aspects really are impacting clients?
Yeah, and I think the fact that coming from the agency world, our employees and our partners have been in the trenches. We've honestly seen anything and everything that can either go wrong or that definitely works. So we're able to pull that experience and like you guys were both mentioning, just bring it to the advantage of the client that we're working with at that time. So I think that's one of the biggest things is, instead of going out and trying to figure it out yourself, we'll already have what works and what doesn't work, so we're able to guide you in the right direction on how to implement your advertising campaigns, your content writing, your websites, or if there's any programming tasks, we're able to basically pivot to handle that.
Well, and I think part of the reason why you're able to do that, or really any agency, is that you don't have an entire team or office full of generalists, right? You have people who are really damn good at what they do. But when you're a certain size business or organization, I should maybe say, keep it a little bit broader, you don't have the luxury of hiring 10, 15 people. You just don't. That's expensive. And so generally you have one person. They're in charge of marketing and possibly also business development and a bunch of other things as well, but they're a generalist. And so teaming up with an agency gives you that added luxury of having a whole bunch of people, sure, with all that experience, but individually experts in their realm, versus you might know a little bit about ads, a little bit about social media, but you don't know about the I don't know, the algorithmic changes that are happening left, right, and center, or that new update that's coming in 6 months and how that's going to impact your rankings or how your ads are going to be approved or whatever the case might be. So on the web development side, Parneet, I'm interested to hear, obviously everybody knows, you need a specialist for social and this and that, but it's very much on the web development side, a world of specialists as well.
Oh, big time. It's many people coming together to make a client's website a reality. So that's where I think the advantage for the clients is that you're getting a graphic designer, you're getting a UX UI expert, you're getting programmers, and if you have special tasks or needs out of your website, you're getting very specific types of programmers as well, or animators. And again, if you were doing it yourself, you'd have that one person, but with the agency, you're able to tap into each of those resources to basically get the website of your dreams and deliver all the experiences that you do want to deliver to your clients.
Yeah. Jordan, you want to talk about agency limitations?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered already now 3 different strengths. So we talked about the strength in numbers. I think that's a huge one with agencies, and kind of the most obvious one, the experience that comes with, more experienced agencies, hopefully, as well as hiring specialists and kind of introducing that advantage to your marketing efforts. I think on the other side, though, there are limitations to agencies. There's things that we're good at and things that we aren't. At least at our agency, we're fairly upfront about those things. Yeah. The one that really sticks out to me is the one that comes up most often would be for social media, for example. Social media is really, really popular. It's probably one of the most common things that people come to us first because they see it. It's visible. It's like, oh, my business needs social media. It's like, great, tell me more. Usually when you get down to it, maybe they don't, maybe they do. But an agency can deliver various parts of a social media mix quite well. We're really good at organizing things. We're really good at keeping a schedule. We're really good at scaling effort. But we're not in the business day to day, like in the same way that you would be as a frontline worker or as an owner, operator, the CEO. You're going to have advantages in the moment that resonate super well on social media. Like that is really, really gold territory if you have the time and energy and ability to activate on it. So there's kind of an overlap where some agencies can get really close to that line and they specialize in that. So they've really dedicated a lot of their processes and teams to becoming the best at closing that gap as much as they can. And then you've got, on the other extreme, most agencies have a lot of difficulty. Maybe they've got an office in a completely different country that they're now working for you and they're producing social media content. They are definitely not in the moment when a new client comes into the store and is excited about a product. That would be great on video, but there's just no way to know about it, therefore no way to capitalize on it. So bridging those gaps in an agency world is something that's a struggle. So if that's important to you, you're going to be finding very few agencies that are really specialized in that area. Or you can kind of look at yourself and go like, an agency's not meant to be a complete replacement for what you're doing in a business as well. We're meant to complement and scale and assist you to become better. So, if you're the one doing the in the moment stuff and you work with an agency that maybe has difficulty in that, that can be a great way to still utilize the agency for what it's good at and take care of the limitations up front.
Hey,
the big
agency.
thing when it comes to limitations is like the place where specialists in generalists should live. Like obviously we're at Atrium, everyone's a specialist, everyone has dedicated roles and tasks. Generalists do everything, cover everything, great. They have their place. And one of the best places, at least in relationship to how agencies work, is having someone who's a generalist or a marketing manager or someone who actually understands what we're talking about when we're trying to communicate, to be able to be that point person on the inside. Like I'm the point person for this, for a lot of our clients for here, great, but we can't have someone that doesn't know how to speak to us if, we have a super blue collar oil field worker, business owner. He has no idea what we're asking for half the time. But if you have someone that's in a position to be that middle communicator, they can then fill the space of in the moment, and also properly be able to inform and lead the agency that they're partnered with. It can be a lot more complicated relationship because they know more, but it tends to be an easier relationship in terms of communicating what you need from each other.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to Go, Meg.
I was
Go
just
for
saying,
it.
in a past life, I was that journalist. It was not super enjoyable because, yeah, it's a lot of hats to wear all at once. I know there are people that thrive in that world and in that section of the industry, and to them, I absolutely tip my hat because you have way more focus than I did, and probably somehow magically way more time in a day. And I think at the end of the day, the perfect marriage is you do need to have a generalist that's in-house that understands enough to be dangerous, but understands enough to know that they cannot physically do it all in 24 hours a day, and knows how to leverage the expertise of this team that can kind of take care of the macro lens or the micro, depending on how your structure and your strategy needs to work. But as you said, when you can adapt to the in the moment, on the fly, and really truly lean on each other and create that collaborative environment, that's when things get really fun for everybody involved, because there's just way less stress and tension on either side. But it's also when you're going to get an ROI, because instead of fighting each other and seeing each other as the enemy, which should never be the case, you've got two different types of minds working together to create the best path forward. And I think that's where a lot of businesses and arguably agencies and internal marketing teams really miss out.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was on a call with a prospect earlier today, and he first started off with, "So what are we talking about today? Are we talking about email marketing? You know, like is that what we want to talk about? You know, do we want to talk about social media?" And I just realized really quickly that he had no idea how to achieve his goals and his objectives. And as we started talking, I kind of helped him to understand that there are certain things that an agency can do really, really, really well. There are certain things that we can't. For example, email marketing is one of those things that we don't do. Why? Because a lot of that stuff is in the moment, you know, unless you're running, you know, campaigns and you're, you know, building funnels and all those types of things. But an agency is better tied to an objective, right? So there's a certain objective, a certain goal that you're trying to achieve. Get that agency to align solely on that objective. Anything outside of that, you can handle in-house. So I was going to say earlier, like, hey, agency, you know, I want you to write me a blog about this random thing because I'm going to a trade show here in 3 weeks or whatever. That's better suited by yourself. Let your agency work on your search marketing. Let them work on the stuff that's actually moving the needle on your business long term. Unfortunately, flexibility is not necessarily an agency's strength. I always use the analogy as we're Titanics in bathtubs. You know, we say that we're limber and, you know, we can pivot really quickly, but the truth is we really, really can't. And I think the sooner that agency owners and you know, coordinators and such are honest with their clients about that, the better those clients are going to be, frankly.
Oh, totally. I think flexibility is an interesting one because we want to accomplish the goals that we've set out to, but the distractions that come with you know, in the moment tasks can sometimes derail that performance and that goal that you're striving for. Especially, you know, from a web design perspective, we'll be working and our designers will be working on, you know, designing a new site for the client. But on the flip side, we're being asked right away, right now, to design something that's not even related to the website. So it's going to take, you know, resources away from your goal to accomplish an in-the-moment task. And that's where sometimes agencies are not necessarily the best equipped to handle that. But, you know, whenever we can assist, we certainly like to. But I think you're right with the flexibility that the in-the-moment tasks are the hardest.
I think a fallacy in this industry is people confuse flexibility with being fluid and being adaptable. I would argue that a strong and experienced agency definitely knows how to be the latter. You know, we have clients that come to us all the time where, especially during COVID, we don't have this product line anymore. And, you know, I've spent 9 months building a campaign strategy for a very specific type of truck or produce or whatever it might be that's ending up somewhere that no longer exists. So can I adapt? Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% will, and we'll go back to the data and find what's going to be fluid and matches best. But if you're coming to me saying, well, I want to get a hit in the next 3 weeks and I want to do this, it's actually my job to at times from yourself and say, sure, in theory, I could flex and do that for you, but that's not actually adapting your strategy in a way that's beneficial for you long term.
Yeah.
And so I think when people want those ad hoc moments, it doesn't help, depending.
It distracts. It honestly distracts. You're not gonna achieve the goal that you do, and we're gonna be, you know, essentially moving in circles back at square one, still trying to solve your overall problems because we've now had a distraction.
Yes.
And sometimes what clients are asking for flexibility in is not, I think, not related to the actual goals. They get lost along the way. I've noticed that in terms of like the general public doesn't know what marketing is. The general public absolutely has no idea what digital marketing is. I am constantly explaining my job in various levels, but like the flexibility, I think a lot of people misconstrue as I need you to get this done now, and not understanding that like there's a whole other purpose behind this. That's something I've seen in a lot of business owners that I know personally, because they view it as normally in their spaces things can get turned around really quickly. That's where the flexibility comes from. To them, they're like, well, then I should be able to get this just as fast, not understanding the level of work that goes into each one of our tasks and actions. Everything is mapped out per hour, per minute, to try and like keep it efficient and moving forward. So there's only so much room for flexibility when we're literally mapping it out per the minute.
Yeah, and that's where having an objective is really important when working with an agency. Like different agencies specialize in different things. So some of them will specialize in solving a bunch of different problems or working on different objectives for businesses and becoming the best at that as an agency. But usually a good agency has some kind of an objective they're wrapped around, the most efficient and scalable, landing page funnels, or, scaling your ability to do social media posting on a regular basis. Like those are noble objectives for an agency to build a process around and kind of allow you to have something you can get on board with as a business and scale with. But there are some air quotes agencies. I'm a little bit maybe biased against these types of agencies. Ooh. I hesitate to call them agencies, which are job shops. They're essentially job shops. They don't have an objective. They're just doing the work that's been requested of them. Fair enough. You deserve a place in this competitive environment, but that is quite a very different thing than what we've been talking about today, which is more about agencies that have objectives and processes, and they built a model around solving particular problems.
Well, and I love that you bring up the job shop thing, because one of the misconceptions is that an agency is going to know absolutely every single thing about your business model and your service and your product and understand your audience, your persona inside and out from day one. And those job shops really struggle to do that, because the reality is that knowledge is gained over time. Right? So that knowledge transfer, every agency tries to do the best they possibly can up front. I always tell clients, today is the worst it'll ever be. It'll always get better from year forth. But those job shops are really unable to really grasp everything because they're not usually with you for a longer period of time.
And I'll defend job shops. And the reason I'm going to defend them is there's very specific needs that they meet. Design Pickle is something like that. It meets a very specific purpose to design your everyday graphics that you will need that an agency may not be best equipped to handle to deliver. So in that case, a service like that would be great to add to the mix in addition to the agency that you're working with who's working on your long-term goals. So I think we can't completely throw them under the bus saying that there's not a place for them. I think they work hand in hand in taking care of some of those in the moment tasks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, to be clear, I'm not saying they shouldn't be here as a business. Like they definitely have a place, and I'm glad they're here. In fact, I'd use them myself if I had the need. But they're not an agency in my mind. They are a completely different type of business, and I think that to call them an agency would be a misnomer and a misuse of that term.
Ooh, hot takes with Jordan Wolf.
I think in some ways it's the difference between a long-term collaborative relationship that's going to get you a much greater ROI versus maybe something that's getting your feet off the ground for something very short-term. You're putting something out into a test market. It's an A/B thing where you don't necessarily have a term strategy versus somebody that can really take you to that next level, get you where you need to be, and firmly establish you within your market permanently. It's kind of, I guess, to make a horrible analogy as I do as a content writer, it's kind of like a granola bar on a long hike versus the meal when you come home. They both have a very valid point and purpose. It just depends on what works best for your strategy at that point in time. And I think, again, apparently I'm the danger beacon of the day. When it becomes dangerous is when you're expecting a job shop to care and invest, not that they don't care, but to have that long-term commitment to you, where an agency is going to come in and really, they have to foster that relationship with you, or it's just not going to be effective. Or if you're expecting an agency to, quick turnaround, you're just going to be disappointed, because that's not what the heart of either one is. And it's making sure that each placement within your marketing strategy is where it.
Yeah.
So Parneet, how does that knowledge transfer happen? We were just chatting about that. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of service you're providing, website project, a development project, an app, whether it's ads, whatever, right? I mean, how does that knowledge transfer typically happen? And where would you say the limitations and the strengths are within that?
I think
put you on the spot.
Sorry?
Put you on the spot.
I think it needs to happen in multiple places. And let's take websites as an example of that, and how we take what you want and deliver it at the end, and hit the mark and not miss it. I think the knowledge transfer needs to start from the beginning, and it's coming from our consultations with the client to determine what their needs are, and to make sure that we're getting what they need to accomplish out of this website, and getting all of that information. So that initial transfer is happening right at the beginning to what we're delivering at the very end, which is hopefully we've gathered all the information that we needed to, and delivered a website that's going to accomplish their goals from a marketing perspective. But at the same time, during that process, there's going to be additional information that we're going to need to send back and be like, hey, as great as this is, as you want, animations all over the website and a video to play on the homepage and nothing else, we've got to now transfer the knowledge backwards and saying, that's not the smartest thing to do, because it's not going to help you accomplish your goals. And then,
knowledge transfer is only as good as the communication skills of the parties involved.
Big time.
Because we can be really good about educating, breaking it down, using kindergarten words, but if the other person doesn't have the information, for one, that happens far more frequently than I would love to admit, that we're talking to the person without the information, but also, can this person even communicate properly what we're talking about?
Also, it's also hard when we're trying to explain from our side, why we're making certain decisions, and they're just not getting it. That communication gap at that point is going to cause a lot of issues. So taking care to understand and actually communicate properly is going to be very helpful in that knowledge transfer both ways.
Yeah, so I think at this point we've covered, again, another 3 basic limitations about, agencies are really good at, a bunch of things we covered earlier, but they're also difficult with flexibility. We kind of have some struggles with the in the moment and in the place kind of concerns. And like you're just saying, knowledge transfer is definitely that while you can build tools and processes on it, there's still always going to be some kind of a gap there versus, what you might be able to glean inside the actual business yourself. I think the next part of the agenda here is to kind of move into, so we've got the strengths, we've got the limitations, but let's assume we are going to work with an agency. We've begun this relationship between a business and an agency. Let's talk about maybe what the agency requires of the business in order to be successful. This is definitely a topic that we spend a lot of time on because this is something that can completely derail even the best of intentions when it gets into working on solving marketing challenges or programs long term.
Well, I
biggest
think
thing I need from clients is to, answer their phone, answer their emails.
I was going to say exactly.
Respond to my questions, even if you just tell me, "Hi, I am buried." Circle back to me on so many days forward. Great. I'm going to put something in my calendar and I'll call you then and I'll ask how you're doing. And then I'll get all the things I need from you. But I've had clients bail for weeks, months at a time. And I'm like, at a certain point, I'm like, Jordan, I need to ship you out somewhere to Timbuktu to hunt this man down for me.
But it's not annoying at all.
And they're still paying. They're still paying for their program. You are wasting your money. I'm trying so desperately for you not to do that. That is all I'm trying to do. And sometimes people don't like that.
Be present when you're needed.
Head.
Yeah, you'll email a client, you'll ask a question, and they'll respond with everything but the answer to the question. You're just like, but that I can't go any further than, can you approve this website? And it comes back as like, hey, we want to build a website for another company. I'm like, okay, but what about the launch that's sitting like, that I just asked for approval for?
Yeah.
When you're needed, be present. That's it.
Yes.
You know, I don't know.
Please communicate when you can't. I just need
and
a
like,
little bit more communication from some people. That's
from
all.
the content side, it's just, it's hard. Like, you know, I've had clients literally baking cookies while I'm trying to interview them and make money for their business. And I get it. I love cookies. I love to eat. But at the same time, it's like, if I showed up to your business and pulled this while you were in the middle of trying to do your job, probably wouldn't feel very good. Personal aside, because I don't actually care. It's, I am here to help you. I am here to help you achieve your objectives. And I understand that you've probably been in your industry for a really long time. And so for you, as much as you may love it and be passionate about it, there's always going to be some objective blindness that comes in. So if you ask me how I do my job as a content writer, a lot of the times, depending on how alert and how much coffee I've had in the day, I go, hey, oh no, I just write stuff, which is true. But that's not helpful for somebody who wants to learn about what I actually do. It's not helpful for a client who wants to understand how I get to the objective that they need to have accomplished. And so it's just, please create that shared dynamic in that environment and understand that there is a purpose for being there, that we are asking you to do something because it matters, and that ultimately at the end of the day, if you are partnered with a good agency, we truly do care about getting those results, but that also means that you need to be present and you need to be engaged, because otherwise there's no point.
Yeah, I always tell clients that when we're going to be moving into a meeting, or, you know, we're just starting a relationship, we're talking about roles and responsibilities, and, you know, it's on both sides. One thing we try to do as an agency, and most agencies should strive to do, is defend your client's time because of those situations. Like, this is not top of their priority. They have other things to do to run their business, and meeting with us can seem like it, even though they're paying us to solve a problem for them. You know, having us work on processes and being prepared for meetings and limiting so that, you know, we don't require 4 hours distributed across 20 meetings for you. We distill it down to one 45-minute really focused meeting where we've got our questions, we know what we need to do, we get in, we get out, and we respect the client's time at the same time. That helps to mitigate that in the client's eye as well, make it not worse.
It's like a marketing hit class. Get to the point.
Yeah.
So, Meghan,
Exactly.
I'd love to ask you a question.
Sure.
When it comes down to it, as a writer, you obviously need to gather all the information that's needed to write those pieces so that it's relevant to the audience and so on and so forth. That real life feedback can get pretty juicy and almost like you can be direct and extremely critical with your writing.
Do it.
Yeah? Like, how hard do you want people to swing? I mean, I'd love to hear your feedback on that. And why?
So, I mean, obviously, it's going to be different for everybody, right? I'm a very long time. I'm a very sarcastic, direct individual. I got a funny sense of humor. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And I tell clients this time and time again because I get it. We all want to be nice. I love that you're a nice person. But I don't know what I don't know. And if you're not telling me, and it's just sitting there in the background festering and building, and quarter after quarter you're sick and tired of me using the wrong word, but as far as I can tell when I go do my independent research, that's what everybody else is saying in the industry. There's no way for me to know. I don't care about whose fault it is. It's not about picking sides. It's just tell me. I signed up for this job because I love the process of learning and knowledge, and I'm in an industry where I could go to sleep tonight and wake up and Google could have blown up their entire search process and I just have to deal with it. I signed up for that level of stress. You're probably upset me if you don't like my writing, but if you don't tell me the truth, I can't help you. You know, like I have had the odd occasion, and it's not anything to do with hurt feelings. It's be as objective and critical as possible, but keep it above board. You know, like we had a client like riffing and going hard on stuff, totally funny, But ultimately, at the end of the day, is it efficient if I can't tell what you mean by that feedback? Not really. And that's okay. That's where it's also my job to teach you how to talk to me, just like I want to learn how to talk to you. Because every industry has their unique lingo, they have their unique perspective on things. Every business that's a leader within their industry will have their own subsequent unique perspective. I have no ego coming into this aside from thinking I'm pretty good at what I do. And I really love doing what I want to do, so I want to succeed. I'm competitive with myself. None of that's your problem. But if you don't tell me who you are, what you want to do, what's new in your business, you can't expect someone to give you the best results. And at the end of the day, that's all we want from you. You got to be comfortable giving feedback. You also have to be engaged enough to get that feedback, because we do often end up chasing clients going, hey, you've got stuff that's waiting, we don't know. And then they come through. Content may be waiting for 3 to 6 months, which in the terms of the search marketing program that I predominantly work with, means they're actively just hemorrhaging results. Then if they're coming in 3 months after the fact and going, oh, well, this piece is really good, but it turns out we actually need like these 3 paragraphs completely changed because now there's a new, I work with a digital securities company, let's say in theory there was a new regulation that came out, and so everything I wrote now is completely inaccurate, but it was back then. Well, it may not be accurate today, but if it had been live, you still would have been getting traffic to your website. So you're sacrificing people and you're sacrificing money. And at the end of the day, it creates a very unnecessary tension where it's just tell me. Just tell me what you want, and I promise I will give it to you within reason, as long as it's not damaging your own program. Because again, it's my job to protect you from yourself. But just tell it. Just don't hide behind walls. Don't hide behind nice words. Be honest.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you have a team of specialists that actually care about their jobs
Yeah.
and enjoy the places they work at. They might actually want you to grow your business, because that also means job security for me.
I mean, I could not care and just plug it all into a robot, but then we go back to the AI episode, and Lord knows I had thoughts on that, so go check that out. There were some hot takes, but like, if you want to win and you want to succeed and you want to be at the top of your market, you got to do something different. I can't do something different if you don't
You
tell
have
me
to
what the secret sauce
participate.
is. Yes,
You're
there
part
are
of
no
the team,
participation
friend.
awards.
Get off
What?
the bench.
By robot, we're not referring to Jordan Wolfe, I assume.
No,
No.
no,
I thought
no.
we were.
Well, I mean,
that's like when we're talking about robots, we're meaning like robot angry. We're not talking about like robot affectionate, which is what we mean when we talk about Jordan. Like it is
AI.
You can
I'll say
hand
the
him a
hot.
problem.
I'll say the hot word. It's AI.
Oh, yeah.
I could plug
Yeah,
it into
AI.
AI, not take any responsibility for what I write, and not spend hours researching things I like. We've talked about on the podcast before. I am not personally invested in the world of access matting. I spent an ungodly amount of time researching on them so I can create unique content. Yes, I have. It will probably stay with me until the day I die, and I'm okay with that. But many agencies or job shops, whoever it could be, just throw it into ChatGPT, change enough words to get it, viable for Google, and it'll work for a bit. But then you're paying the price. Whereas if you come to me and you're able to have that conversation and go, hey, okay, so this is what we do, but we also have rentals and we repurpose this and we're in the community doing this. So if you need to swap your mats at this point in time and during the season, we can do that much faster. Amazing. You just gave me 5 points that nobody else in your market has, and AI certainly can't give that to me. So let's get you out there. Let's get you to win. Let's make sure people know that that's why they want to choose you as a business, but you got to show up and you got to give me that info. And if I'm not saying something correctly because I misread something, I am a robot, just tell me. It's all good. It's life. We're messy. We figure it out.
Meghan Vanford, the world's leader in content writing for Access Map. Everybody.
Yay.
The
Don't
most
put that on my
unfortunate
tombstone, please.
award to ever win.
Yeah,
we
first
can kind
industry
of
award was
stick
on
on
access mats.
the feedback importance and really building around that. I think that's a very common day-to-day thing that comes up, especially in websites. We could kind of go down a whole other rabbit hole there. But when it comes to, one that I do see that comes up frequently that is definitely a big pet peeve of mine when working with a client is an agency has committed a lot of time and effort into building something that, like I said earlier, solves a problem, like a fundamental problem for you. So usually when people have gone through the process of talking to us, found out if we're a good fit for them, it's because we solve the problem that they're trying to solve. And, they start working with the agency, whether it's us or another agency, solving that problem. Usually it's going to take some time, or you're going to be scaling over time to solve that problem in an ongoing fashion and growing it. but then something comes up, they read a hot article and all of a sudden they're all buzzed about this new social media channel that came out and they're like, oh, can we do this? And let's do that. And let's throw this over that way. Sure. Those are all things that you can talk about and, enjoy thinking about, but don't derail the thing you were trying to work on in the first place. Unless something fundamental has changed about your business. That is a really big no-no. It's like you've got a big problem to solve. Let's stay focused on solving it. Don't get distracted. Don't do the distracted.
The big shiny objects.
Yeah, big shiny.
Don't be a distraction magpie. The shiny thing is not always better, especially if it's not proving to work.
If the shiny thing works for a specific company, it's worked for the company for a very specific reason. You should not go do it yourself. So unless, it was part of a mix that that was agreed upon, that, hey, this is something that we want to pursue, but jumping into it without even thinking, I think is one of the worst things you could do.
So, if an agency requires a number of things from their client, being present and obviously being critical and committing to, that shared outcome, there's clearly, a short list of what an agency should provide you as well. It is a partnership, and I use that word specifically because, at the end of the day, if you don't truly partner together, both parties equally, there's going to be a disconnect, and the outcome, the objective that you went in with in the first, potentially be sacrificed. What would you say, Jordan, is your take on, I could supporting, but I want to almost use the word transparency. I find trust is such an important thing between an agency and a client. Like, where do you feel transparency lives in all of that?
I think you'll see a lot of variety on how agencies approach that. Some agencies are very close
or not
to
at
the
all.
chest. In fact, or they don't provide any transparency at all. I think you can get away with that for a little while, or you've got to be one of those gigantic firms from back in the day where you can kind of get away with that nonsense. But these days, it's a very competitive market. No matter joining it this year or 10 years ago, it's been this way for a while. Creating an agency and making a commitment to a business and saying like, hey, we're the best at this, really requires more than we're the best at this. Trust me. Mm-hmm. It's like, why should I? I'm just going to go to the next guy and he's going to tell me why I should actually trust him. He's going to show me and he's going to give me evidence and he's going to explain his process really clearly. He's going to take me and be involved in this process. So kind of having that keep it close to your chest philosophy on transparency is probably not, or lack of transparency is probably not the best approach in today's world. So I would argue, transparency would be a good thing that an agency should be providing when you work with them. Well,
it's funny because if
transparency is a consequence, trust is a consequence of transparency. Yes. Got it out.
Yeah.
But
I think trust and
if
transparency,
you're transparent, you're trying to be as
time.
honest as you can. Like if you're just like, here's all the information I possibly have. And that's something we do with clients constantly. Or like even like I have pulled stuff up for clients if they're looking for information. I've pulled up their own analytics in the background. They've never even looked at it, and I'm in there so rarely that I'm just hoping I know what I'm looking for. But I'm showing them and I'm being honest as I go through. Oh, I don't know what this section means. Please don't look at it too hard. I know it looks red, but that means nothing to either of us right now. But a client has no problem turning around, asking me a question, and isn't scared when I say, oh, I don't know, give me a minute. Give me 10 minutes, I'll circle back with you. The trust is the consequence of the actions of transparency, of the actions of everything possible of your workflow. Like that's our kickoffs, is like literally step by step, how do we do your program? And we're going to stop you after every slide and go, is this for you? Do you have any questions? How do you feel about this? Because we want them to understand that we are trying to provide them with all the possible information and in praying in hopes that they give it back to us.
Well, let's be real.
But we do our best.
Let's be real for a minute. You know, you're a business, maybe a small business, right? And you know you're at a point of scalability where you need marketing to help you get to that next tier. So you approach an agency and you go, okay, I got to give you, I don't know, $2,500 a month or whatever it is, 10 grand or whatever that thing is that they're doing. And then on top of me giving you money, I also have to give you my trust, right? Like as a transaction, you should be giving me something for the money that I'm paying, right? And so as an agency, you have to turn around and provide transparency. And whether that's transparency in your process, in who your team is, the deliverables you're providing, in a lot of cases, it's actually putting in proper KPIs that are tied to business objectives, so you're not chasing vanity metrics, and ensuring that you're aligned in that is very, very, very important. Without transparency, like Seanna was saying, without transparency, trust doesn't get built. And as to if there's a bee in the bonnet at any point in time, you're cut. You're cut. That's just the way that it goes.
If you're an expert and you can't show your homework to a certain degree, and it's just not to say you overshare, you don't need to show everything. Nobody cares how I go and do my research and dig up deep, dark facts on whatever the case may be. And I'll be honest, I don't necessarily care about how you individually count every single product that you have in your warehouse, but I do care about why you're able to do it efficiently for your client's benefit, right? So being able to just be honest and show that what you're doing, show that you're confident, show that you know what you're doing. And if your agency can't do that, they're not your agency. They are hiding something and it's not worth it.
Well, they're not a partner.
If people are, and that's it.
Without
if you don't have a
transparency,
partnership,
you're
you have
creating
nothing.
the gap.
Yes.
You are purposely creating the gap between you and your client. You're eroding any possible relationship
Agreed.
that can grow well and healthily.
Yeah.
Because if you're not being transparent, you're purposing things. And I understand that like you can be purposely lying or like by omission, but if you forget to tell something that's different than hiding it away somewhere and tucking it behind a screen.
And you brought up actually kickoffs, and that's part of the transparency process here. One of the major things that we do in kickoffs is really outline kind of the structure and the method that we're going to be going on. Now, that in itself is something that probably an agency should be providing, is having a good plan and a good methodology to get from point A to point B. Parneet, you're probably working on one of the most complex projects as far as outlining the steps and having to move through a process. Websites are not an easy thing to build. A lot of people just think it's a kind of click it together, but at least for big businesses and professional websites that have to have a high standard, there's a lot of moving pieces and it's requires a lot of different people. How do you looking at the subject of structure and methodology?
Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest, I think, products to deliver from an agency perspective, because you've got to be, that trust and transparency really does come front and center in it, and you have to trust the process that we lay out and that we want to take, and the journey that we want to take you on, and trust that we're going to deliver what's going to, a product or a website in this case, that's going to help you grow your marketing mix, help you grow your business, and, increase your revenues and all that good stuff.
Well, how would anybody expect an agency to build a website that is reflective of what it needs to be, right? Without a proper process, without proper methodology, without skill sets that are broader than one individual who took a HubSpot course, right? So, and that being said, custom web development is a very different service than, hey, I just went and built a Wix website, because I need, I don't know, to find out who's RSVPing for my wedding or something like that. Like, it's a very different outcome. Building a marketing tool is very different than building something that a developer would just, put together because it needs to function a certain way, like an online brochure or something like that.
Totally. And
this brings it back to the why. Like, why are you building your website? Why are you doing any of this at all? Mm-hmm. Like, that's really what it is. It's like, what's the purpose? What does this do for you? What does this do for your business? And the amount of people I know that have small businesses for themselves and just threw up something that's on Squarespace or Wix that they're never adding anything to. I'm like, why did you build that? Like, it's not adding anything to you. It's costing you money.
Yeah, and if they share those goals with us in those kickoffs that we do, the entire process is, meant to be fun. It's meant to be creative, and it's meant to deliver something that you can be proud of at the end of the day, and that'll help your business grow.
Yeah. So an agency needs to provide you with methodology. In fact, on the prospecting side of our business, sometimes we'll talk to people who just can't afford us, because we're a mid to large size organization, and we kind of meet, clients at that level as well. And the truth is, a lot of the time they can't afford us, and I'll just help guide them as to what to look for. And one of the things is trust an agency that actually has structure and methodology and will tell you no. Like the power of no, as Jordan says. It's one of the most important things, but it's essential when you're basing things on objectives and goals and methodologies. It's a linear process. When you do not have methodology, when you do not have objectives and goals, it's like, release your cat into the yard and predict where it's going to end up in an hour. Like, you have no idea.
How many clients have we had, Chris, especially as on the business development side, that have had that experience with an agency? They came in willing to trust, really eager to kind of make that partnership and to be able to have a long-term collaboration, and they just didn't get it. And so now they come in and they're burned and they're skittish, and that's where fear and anxiety is bred, right? Yep. And so, and it's been funny for me, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but I have so many clients where I've sat down with them, especially in the first 6 months, and I can see it month one, because they're withholding things in the content discovery.
They have just gotten out of toxic relationships.
And that's it. It's, do you actually get it? Do you actually get it? They get their first round of content and they go, okay, so you can actually do what you say you can do, but can you do the extra? And then by the end of 6 months and 9 months, they go, oh my gosh, you were telling the truth. Like, we've had a guy, I remember, they work in safety harnesses and stuff like that. And he just, he was very transparent in saying, I don't want to judge you guys and I don't want to paint you with the same brush, but I've been burned, and it really sucked because we burned a lot of money trying to make a website and a content strategy that we could trust, and now I'm having to start from scratch, and I'm not happy about it. First of all, talking about critique, I love that feedback. Be angry. Tell me the truth about how you're feeling, because then I can actually respond in kind and reassure you, and I can go, you know what? Give me 6 months. Tell me what I'm missing along the way. Absolutely, I'm not an expert in your industry. That's why I'm not your competitor. But let me know what I can improve, and you're gonna see it. And if you don't see it, then I'm not doing my job, and I don't like not doing my job. That's the difference. You have to have that collaboration and the consistency on both sides, but when you don't, you do see the long-term, like toxic relationship damaged effects that linger with clients, and it's really sad, but it's also really rewarding as an agency when you can come in and say, no, I got this, and I'm gonna show you that I get it. And I know you're gonna take a while to trust me, you should, that's okay. But hold on to your hat, because we got this.
Yeah, no,
my favorite.
I know
is
we
when
talked
we've had
about
one of those abused clients, and then they recover their feelings about how marketing works, because previously they're like, no, it all sucks. Thinking of Mad Men era, but really, when you talk to anyone who's never been around or white collar or professional services, they still think marketing's Mad Men. So why would we be any different than the next man?
Yeah, at this point, we've talked about a couple things that agencies should be providing: the transparency and the structure and methodology. Kind of the one I'll end on is one that agencies typically are not very good at actually delivering on, and it's mostly, I think, coming from the customer side. A lot of customers come to agencies asking for a particular outcome. I mentioned earlier that the importance of having an outcome and kind of having a goal that agency can work towards. But do you have the right one is a very valid question. So are you solving the right problem? A lot of people come to an agency saying like, oh, I need more leads, or I need a million followers on my social profile. And there's a lot of agencies built to do that. They will promise things like, we'll help you get to 1 million followers. We'll help you to get X amount of leads per week. Great. That sounds like a great thing to sign up for. But when you start getting into it, maybe the methodology that they choose to use for that is, some design thinking with very creative people. They create a fantastic campaign. Maybe it does get you 1 million followers. The problem happens the next day with the agency being approached usually by the business owner going like, great guys, that was fantastic. Do it again. And
if you can't replicate it.
Yeah. So like consistency is one of those number one things, especially in today's world. If your agency can't deliver consistency, then in of an agency at all, that is a particular bug of ours at Atrium. But that's something I think is still universally valid. A lot of attrition happens in the agency world, mostly because of this thing. They have a great solution at a point in time, but they're not able to deliver on it consistently. So they end up, the client gets dissatisfied, the agency gets frustrated, and they part ways, and they find the next one, rinse and repeat. So finding one that can kind of end that cycle with some consistency is a really important aspect to consider.
Yeah.
Putting yourself in the shoes of your customer is really, really important. So if you're leading with creativity, if you're leading with a service offering, we're going to implement some ad campaigns or whatever, and that's your goal. At the end of the day, you're going to let that business down. That business is trying to make educated decisions on their staffing, on their fleets, on their marketing, let alone owners who are trying to make decisions on their dividends, right? So if you can't provide consistency of whatever that very important KPI is, your attrition, your retention rate as an agency is going to suffer. And let's be honest, if you're a business owner who's trusting your agency, if that agency cannot provide consistency, at the end of the day, you're going to let them go. And you're back to square one, probably in a couple years with another agency, and you're bringing that baggage right in. So, just kind of summarizing a lot of the things we talked about, there is a responsibility from an agency to a client. There is a responsibility, though, from a client to an agency. You have to make sure you're transparent and you're critical and you are educating and you're committed to that outcome and, present when needed, all those things that we mentioned. But if you find at any point in time that your agency is not providing you what you need, don't sit in a dark corner. Talk to them. Let them know where you're at. Let them know that, hey, I have expectations that you're not meeting, because it could very well be that they think your expectations are different, and it could very well be that they're aiming for the wrong thing. So all of that being said, guys, we've never had 5 people on a podcast. I think for the most part, we didn't trip all over each other. I was expecting way more chaos, which we didn't get.
We behaved.
No, honestly.
We behaved.
For now.
Yeah.
Well, we all should have took a Red Bull or something like that before the podcast and just went to town. No, bad idea. Okay.
My
I'm too
ADHD
small for
meds,
that.
I forgot to re-up in the afternoon. They fully crashed by 3 p.m. You're just getting me trying to speak like a normal person with words that come out of my mouth in order, and I don't just continuously talk over other people.
Well, there you go. Well, Meghan,
We also
Seanna,
have embarrassing stories.
Meghan, Seanna,
Oh,
Parneet.
you need an embarrassing story to end the podcast? That helps.
No,
I got other people's.
We'll save that
we're
for
not
next
sure.
time.
We're not going there.
No, I'm going to try to
We're
end
not
this
going there on this
podcast
one.
for the 3rd time now, because
Chris,
Parneet's going to share
run!
some. No more embarrassing stories. Meghan, Seanna, Parneet, I really do appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining the Challengtunity Podcast, and I'm sure we'll have you back on another time.
Sweet.
Peace out.
Have a
Girl
great one,
Scouts.
guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Right. Cheers.
All right, so now I guess I know what's inside that circus tent. That was actually a lot of fun. We did hopefully technologically pull that off. I guess we'll watch in the recording later, but 5 people on screen is possible on the internet. Wow.
It
Look at
is.
us, 2023.
We didn't break the internet, and no one
we
was harmed.
No agency specialists were harmed in the making of this podcast. We should put that little bumper sticker somewhere.
It's true.
I think, it was good. We covered quite a bit of territory, though. Hopefully it was a long one. I'm not sure if this is our longest yet either. We maybe broke more than one record on this episode, but we had 5 people talking, so we had a lot to say apparently about the ins and outs of the agency world and how to work with clients and all that stuff.
It is true. And, obviously we want to say thank you to Meghan, Seanna, and Parneet, all of which are very different. I mean, a content writer's perspective is very different than, say, a project coordinator versus an agency owner versus somebody who's deep into the development of app development, e-commerce and stuff like that. So thanks to those 3. And thanks to you guys for continuing to watch our podcast. I think there are some out there that might shake their heads, but there are definitely some, as we know. Jordan, we got people listening all over the world. Like, we have people in Japan and Singapore and in Europe and South America, all over North America. So it's pretty cool. So if that is you, if you're that one guy or a person in Japan who's watching our podcast, shout out to you. That's pretty cool. Now, that being said, we do a new episode every 2 weeks, launched on Wednesdays. So if you want to know when a new episode hits on YouTube or Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe right there. We do this, obviously, not because we just like hearing our own voices. We do this because we're passionate about these topics, and we like to get a different take and different perspective from different people and share this out to the world. So by all means, like, subscribe, share, comment, get plugged into our social medias, and go to town, because we'd love to hear from you. All that being said, we'll let you go. Goodbye, and we'll see you on the next Challengtunity podcast. By the way, Jordan, I like this music that we have at the end.
Do we have music at the end?
We do have music. Can't you hear the music at the end of the podcast?
I can't hear the music. No,
Oh, okay.
no.
Well,
Are you having a
music.
stroke?
No, I'm
Are we
not.
okay?
Goodbye, everybody. See you in 2
All right,
weeks.
bye.
Ciao.